everyone. Welcome back to Astrology Today with Jeff Harmon. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. And gosh, Jeff, we're talking about the eclipse this evening, aren't we? It's about to hit us tomorrow.
Yes, so it is. Early in the morning.
Can feel the energy already.
You really can.
Feel it.
Yeah, I've felt it actually for the last couple of days, but particularly I've been feeling it today. Even my son was very emotional today. I noticed a lot of people a little more emotional.
Yeah.
Very intense. You can feel like crackling energy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been hearing about accidents happening too, and certain things like that.
Another horrible shooting today again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's intense. It's intense. So,
sure is.
I mean, you've been talking about this for a while, and I know you want to go into it a lot deeper this evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to cover everything, but here's what's important about this eclipse. I've talked about this on other podcasts, but eclipses always happen when the sun and the moon and the earth align in one way or another. And of course, this is a new moon eclipse. So that means the moon is going to occultate, or you could say, the earth is going to occultate the sun. You won't be able to see it here in North America. You're only going to see it, interestingly enough, if you're in Russia or Poland or Eastern Europe and China. They'll be able to see it very clearly, in parts of India, real clear, especially the more western portions of India. As you start getting down, past into Africa and Egypt, it'll really become very hard to see as you get more west. So the Western hemisphere will not be able to see it. But very interesting, all the stuff that's going on right now with Ukraine and China and Russia, that eclipse is happening there. So very significant energies. So this eclipse, I want to talk a little bit about, is a very volatile eclipse. And the reason why the Chaldeans and the Egyptians knew this stuff, so did the yogis of India and the rabbis of the ancient astrology. They knew that these eclipses started at the North or South Pole. This particular eclipse was named Sarocycle 6 South, and it actually began in the year 1049, right before the spring equinox, a long time ago, almost 1,000 years ago. And it doesn't end until 2293. So there's a lot of karmic implications to souls in eclipses. That's my opinion. And these are mysteries that, are probably way beyond anything anyone's ever going to fully intellectually figure out. But they have a real powerful effect and a boomerang effect on the world. So what's so important about this eclipse is the energies they were formed on. They're almost like birth charts of people. And this one was actually formed on a Mars-Pluto opposition. Now, I don't know if anybody knows much about the planet Mars, war and intensity, right? And then also Pluto. That's a bit like flipping matches over an open can of gasoline. It's very intense, very volatile. And not only was there a Mars-Pluto opposition, it also happened at a Venus conjunction. So this is really interesting. And it's very strange because this particular eclipse is also happening with a Sun-Moon conjunct Venus. So there's a lot here going on with passions and very, very interesting energies.
That's not a bad thing.
It could help.
Yeah.
It could help mitigate. But the Mars-Pluto is always volatile. It's a very abrupt. It's about taking power. It's about passion. It's about money. It's about, intensity, all this kinds of stuff. So very intense eclipse. And any way you slice this, it's happening in sidereal Libra. And that as the air trines, see Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius are the air trines in Nadi and Vedic astrology. So what does that mean to the good old US of A? Well, it's happening on the air trine. And I've been mentioning that the United States, as of July 4th of this year, 2022, had Saturn clock in on a 30-year progression over the United States air trine. What is Saturn? The cross over the crescent of the moon. It's always karma, releasing of previously concretized energies now becoming manifest. So we're seeing a lot here. So here's the point. The new moon eclipses, remember, the sun and the moon are like the seed, right? The sun is like the farmer's seed. The moon is like the womb of the earth, just like dad puts the seed in mom's womb, and then spirit or energy becomes manifest. Well, that's a little bit like how the eclipses work. the new moon eclipse that we're having right now is very powerful. And then it will go within 2 weeks. What do we get? We get a sun-moon opposition called a full moon, right? Well, that's the one that really looks much more dangerous than the one that's happening right now. See, the seeds are planted for the volatilities, but the full moon is really pretty dicey. When I looked at this, you have the Mercury is conjunct the sun. Now, that's an ancient term. It's right in the eye of the sun. That's called Kazami or Kasimi. People pronounce it differently, but it means in the seat of the king. What is Mercury? Communications, all that kind of stuff. We could see cyber attacks, disruptions, so on and so forth. Hopefully we don't. Or we could see obscurities in news and media. That couldn't happen. But nah, not here. Come on.
You see that every day.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and the other problem is the full moon is conjuncting Uranus. Now, Uranus, nobody can tell in any of the astronomy why Uranus orbits almost 180 degrees on its side. Uranus is the eclectic game changer. It always throws a grenade in the room. Something out of the blue will happen. So you have a sun conjunct the Mercury, and then you've got that combination opposing Uranus on a full moon. And you could look at the eclipses as kind of like dipping into the water, and then that water comes to full and releases on the full moon eclipse. So this is a real interesting barrel of energy here. And when does that happen? Well, the full moon eclipse is on November 8th. What's that day? Midterm elections.
Good old election.
Good old election. So we could really see some very volatile stuff happening. Could be chaotic. Could be some very wild stuff. All of which Mars is stationing in the sky, also on the air trine in Gemini. So we get the eclipse in the air trine of Libra, and I'm speaking Vedic astrology or sidereal here. And then we have Mars over all these planets of the United States. I'm going to take a second and just show you this, even though it's, a little bit obscure, but we'll for those who have eyes, I'll show it to you. So you can see this is the United States. You can see this is the sun and the moon right here where I'm pointing. I'm sorry I don't make my cursor larger, but if you see my little white cursor, you'll see it here. So the sun and the moon alignment is a new moon. And of course, these little horseshoes are the moon's nodes, where the sun and the moon and the earth align. That's also known as the ecliptic. An easy way to show you is this, one of my favorite diagrams, which actually shows the sun and the moon and the earth aligning. So, and that's this diagram right here. I love this diagram because it kind of puts it more in perspective from an astronomical standpoint. So we can actually see here that the nodes are the alignment points. When we go around and they align up, this diagram doesn't show it perfectly, but that's what's going to happen. So in the diagram of the good old US of A, you can see we got a real cocktail here. You've got Mars, plus it's not shown here, but the progression of Saturn is also in there too, by a 30-year progression. And you've got an eclipse all on these air trines. Where I'm tracing here, this is Libra, this is Gemini, and this is Aquarius, where the moon is. The moon is always a destiny modifier in Nadi astrology, and it is. It always throws a wild card into things. Mars is a destiny disruptor, is what it's referred to by the ancient yogis in India, and my findings on that is pretty much true. Wouldn't you agree, Ella? Haven't you had haven't we seen a little disruption with Mars?
I've had a tussle with Mars.
Oh, yeah, me too.
For a couple of years.
We all have, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
So anyhow, this is some very interesting things to be aware of. The other thing is Saturn just went direct. And here's a little more for you. Come January, watch this. I'll put a time tool up. In January, you can see right now is October 24th, right? The eclipse is tomorrow morning. We're Pacific Coast time. And if I go forward here in weekly increments, you're going to notice right around the 17th of January of 2023, Saturn will further activate the air trine. Actually, technically happens right about the 17th of January of 2023. You can see, what does that mean in plain English? Well, Mars will have just gone direct, and it's going to come back and reactivate the air trine. You've got Saturn, the planet of karma, right over the United States moon. That's called Sadhisate. Sadhisate is an exceedingly powerful energy where karma releases. Look on the screen here. Saturn's glyph is the cross over the crescent of the moon. And one of my favorite diagrams to always show on that is Saturn operates just above the matrix of our present personality or conscious realities. It's the cross over the crescent of the moon, releasing the etheric energies of karma into our reality structures.
So that could be considered a good thing.
Well, it's a powerful thing for sure. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It could go either way. Here's what tips the scales to a good thing. And this, I've been talking about this on a lot of podcasts, and I want to certainly talk about it on this one. You have to put up with my so-called chicken scratch here, but you'll see here that I actually have the United States Sibley chart right here. And if I expand this, you will see right here, this is a little hard because I have to do these by hand. There's no computer programs yet that do it kind of the way I like to do it. But you could see, it's a little hard to see, from 246 years to 276 years old. These are the ages of the United States. Because the United States, of course, its birth chart is the 4th of July, 1776. So here's the saving grace and answer to your comment, Ella. And that is Jupiter by progression right here. See, these are the progressions. Takes a little time to understand it, but it's actually really simple once you get into it. Jupiter will begin a 12-year sojourn over the water trine of the United States. And somebody might say, okay, so what? What does that mean? It means a lot because the water trine of the United States, water trines tend to have a deep dharma and purpose. They release a lot of old stored karmas as well. Why? The water and the earth is of the moon. The fire and air trines are of the sun. Everything is the seed of the sun of creation, the crucible of the moon, the earth, and manifestation on spirit on the soul cauldron called Earth. Well, when Jupiter hits this water trine, it's going to hit Mercury, and it's going to hit the United States ascendant. That means quite possibly a blessing. We might see some real legal issues that come through for us. We might see some things that break loose that really help this country. You know, and I don't mean to, I know a lot of people, I have a lot of clients all over the world, and I certainly don't mean to just single out the United States. But the United States is the one spoke in the wheel. I think if it's taken out, we're going to see the whole world crumbled into a global new one world fascist order. We're seeing this already. And I think this is part of what this whole energy of the eclipse is. And I don't want to leave out here what I've been saying for the last probably decade, that 2020 has the trigger point, literally, of fascism returning. We see this happens repeatedly throughout history. And we saw it. In fact, the Saturn-Pluto conjunctions were very strong around the First and Second World War. Very, very powerful. And they're back again. Nixon took us off the gold standard, very close to when that happened in the 70s. So we see these happen about every 35, 40 years. And they're exceedingly powerful. Here's the other point. There was a 240-year Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that I have mentioned repeatedly that is ushering in a new high-tech age. And that is extremely, extremely important. So that one, I think, has like almost been a new birth, if you will, for the world in new directions. And I think some of our new one world order people are abusing that, taking advantage of that. Some of them would like to replace us all with AI, and not to get conspiratorial here, but I think the astrology mirrors that. So back to the positive news, this may actually be a tipping of the scales in the right direction. So we'll see what happens here. But this starts, if you do the math from July 4th and you take 6 months forward, because it's 246.5, which is a half of a year. Half of a year is 0.5. That's going to put us right in January. Mm-hmm. So let's hope. I think we just need to be vigilant. I think people need to really get out for this country and do everything they can, because it's exceedingly important right now. There's never been a more important time, I think, in the history of this country. And I want to close with something that's exceedingly important. And Ellie, you know I've been talking about this forever. And that is the United States is going through a Pluto return. And I want to put that back on the screen. The Pluto return, what that means in plain English is Pluto is returning to its birthplace in the United States. None of us will ever live long enough to see that personally, because why? It's 245 to 250 years. It's not exact, but that's a long time. And I don't think we'll be in these bodies that long. And if we are, I want to know what you're eating for breakfast. But anyhow, the point is, you can see here on the screen, the United States started the tropical Pluto return right here in February of 2022. It's right when the Ukraine situation broke loose. It came back again in July of this summer, and the final hurrah is going to be right there. You can actually see, it's a little hard to see, but if you zoom in on your phones or your laptops, you can see it right there. That is a circle with a lineup, which is interconnecting with these dashed lines. See, the computer draws all the dashed lines as a birth chart. And of course, this case, we're looking at the United States. These sinusoidal wavelengths are the planets going direct and retrograde. Direct is down, retrograde is up. And the station points where they stop and appear to go backwards from the Earth's perspective are these little points right here. So the United States is experiencing something it's never experienced before. Pluto return. The entire Roman Empire was divided on the first Pluto return at 250 years after its inception. And then it completely dissolved on the second one. It actually survived 2 of them. So they're exceedingly powerful. They're very disruptive. They can demean Pluto all they want for being a planet. Its glyph is the sun over the crescent, over the moon. You can actually see it right here. So extremely powerful. The other thing is, and I hate to not be, you could say, simple with this, but life isn't simple. We also have to look at this from a sidereal standpoint. Now, what I just did, if you've noticed, I'll go back here, I did something called precession correction. You might say, well, what does that mean? Well, precession is the precession of the equinoxes of our solar system around the central sun, which most people kind of tacitly agree that it's somewhere short of 26,000 years, 25,700 something odd years. And to the flat earthers, I still say this model stands. And it's very interesting how the Egyptians, particularly the Chaldeans and the Vedic and many different cultures, look at Chaco Canyon in the United States, they all knew about the precessions of the equinoxes, meaning that it appears that it moves 1 degree every 72 years, our solar system does. So what I'm doing right now, sorry for a little education there, but I'm correcting the United States because it's 246 years old. That's a long time. And if you divide that by 72, it's already moved almost 4 degrees. You see what I'm saying? The precession of the solar system. So we must look at the sidereal, which a lot of people call Vedic astrology. Now, hate to be the bearer of bad news, folks, but guess what? The Pluto return in the sidereal system is really just getting going. It doesn't complete. It actually really gets strong right there. The first hit is going to be in the February of 2024. It's going to come back again right here in July of 2024. And the final hurrah is going to be right there in the end of December of 2024. Moreover, we are going through something that hasn't happened since the Civil War, and I've mentioned this many times before, is a Neptune square Mars. And people say, well, what does that mean? Well, Neptune square Mars is blowing smoke up your rear end, for lack of a better expression, or kind of like urinating down your back and telling you it's raining. So pardon my little crass expressions, but kind of true. And a lot of people are feeling that way right now.
Yeah.
In the whole.
A lot of deception. A lot of deception.
And thank you. That is precisely the right word for Neptune square Mars, deception. It's a wonderful word. So I love that. And I would tell you that that's what we're going through. And again, let's hope that this ends up being the phoenix rising out of the ashes and not the destruction of this country, because we could see both. We really could. And we may see a little of both. In order to have the phoenix rising out of the ashes, sometimes you got to get ashes.
Yeah. Well, we have looked at an interrogation on that, right? And it kind of did look like a little bit of both.
It did. Clearly it did. Yes. I would say this, we put up a video, which you might want to watch, as to whether or not we're all going to go up in a mushroom cloud, right? Will there be nuclear war? We did that, I think, like a week or so?
Yeah, about a week ago.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Well, let's hope
the
that's
astrology
right.
shows.
You know, some people might accuse that of being rudimentary. In other words, that's just simple. How could you cast a chart? But interrogation astrology is really looking at a question posed. You cast a chart for the moment. It's a birth chart for consciousness. Very interesting.
Right.
And I keep getting, and I have had many clients ask similar questions, and I keep getting a positive response, which means it doesn't appear so. And I always drop back to, really, I think this planet is a place that is very divine. Yes, it has a lot of wars and a lot of horrible things that happen on it, and a lot of souls come and go. Sometimes not too pleasantly.
Yeah.
But I don't believe a all-out holocaustic event that would wipe out all life on Earth would be allowed. I always love to refer to my favorite diagram. This is a diagram that I believe in my heart to be true. It's supported by many ancient texts in different ways. And that is the divinity of this planet is very, very far down the totem pole of creation. And our souls are believed to be created up here hundreds of dimensions above the celestial matrix of the universes. And I do say that plurally. There is a very interesting and very amazing text called the Sefer Yetzirah. Yetzirah is a very strange word that means formation. You can actually see it here on the diagram. Formation in physics, that would mean that energy becomes solidified. This is where molecules and matter and the amino acids and all the stuff in building blocks physics, physicists and various different scientists are talking about and discovering all the time new vistas into creation. Well, that's hundreds of dimensions below, you could say, the divinity of where souls are created. And, a topic we've talked a lot about in the past is artificial intelligence and all this new encroachment of technology.
Right.
Never going to be ensouled like you are. We are spiritual beings in these physical bodies. And the AI can certainly probably do things faster than we can. They certainly can act very logical. But there's an old term called soulless. And I think we all got to stay in a place where we're not fearful and stay vigilant about where the world's at right now, where fascism is right now, and just hold the space for truth. Because
we've got to, because we don't want to end up in a soulless place.
Well, it certainly seems to be where the world's always pushed to be going.
Yeah.
And, we've had discussions about this where the demonic spirits, every culture has a story about a war in heaven and these spirits were cast down. Of course, the West has the Judeo-Christian Garden of Eden story. And, a lot of people say, well, that's just old stories. I'm not so sure about that. There's too many very, very ancient texts and very wonderful texts. I love to mention the Shari Hagilgam, which is a Hebrew English text that specifically talks about the journeys of souls and the purification and rectification of souls. And so many other texts, like I've mentioned, the Magus of Strovolos, which is...
That's wonderful.
It's an amazing... Yeah.
Wonderful.
And, when you stay in these spaces, you become rooted in who we are, and that is spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're all going to pass away, so, but the spirit and psyche doesn't. And I defy anyone to disprove that. You look at books like, I love to mention 30 Years Among the Dead by the psychiatrist, Dr. Wicklund, Dr. Edith Fiore's work, Dr. Fry's work, and so many others who have clinically validated. I've had the blessings of working with some really amazing psychiatrists who work in the prison systems, who work for state boards, top people. And it's really been a blessing to compare the notes with some of their findings and beliefs with the Vedic and Nadi astrology issues. I'm amazed daily when I do a reading, and I'll mention, I just did a reading today with, I just said, oh my God, your poor mother, she went through hell. And the client said, how did you know? Well, the moon is the mother in Nadi astrology, and the sun is the father in your birth chart. And when you look at these things, it's stunning. So you realize that Earth isn't just some place that's, a bunch of molecules. It's a very spiritual place of divinity. Look at the animals, look at the birds, look at the sea. It's scintillating with energy.
Yeah, the tree, the leaves. We were just talking about the leaves last night and how alive they are, how alive everything is. Everything.
Even the mineral kingdom is alive. Like gems. I work a lot with gemstones and prescribe them for people, and you can feel it. It's alive.
Yeah, right.
It has a very powerful energy.
Absolutely.
Just like herbs and foods. It's
all energy. We were just talking about this yesterday. It's all energy. It's all aliveness.
That's exactly right. They say if the seraphims and the cherubims and the thrones ever quit chanting the permutations of God's name, the entire universe and I do say that plurally, would be gone in probably less than a picosecond. And you think about that. So everything is so far beyond our intellectual understanding. And, you look at a baby being born, you look at a plant coming out of the ground, you look at a bird cracking out of an egg or any other animal. It's pretty stunning. And I think we can clone, we can certainly do all kinds of manipulations of genetics and all that, but try creating life and ensouling it. That's something I don't think we'll ever be able to do.
Can't do it.
It's interesting. I had a great conversation about this just recently, where there appears to be destruction that happens to the human race every, so many thousands of years. And that may be because we advance and we start messing with creation, and the divine actually causes the recycling of it. And it seems to be very specific. I just got a wonderful series on Egypt and ancient Egypt. And like when we started tonight, we started to speak about the eclipses. It's profound how much, we think, they were old and, working with stones and, out there with caveman clothes on. I don't think so. The evidence shows quite the contrary. They knew more about astrology than I think any of the modern stuff is, particularly the Vedantic. It was all coded in numerology and gematria and various different ciphers. Even the old Vedantic scriptures, it's all numerology. They say the entire universe is formed out of numerology. So don't get too bent out of shape about this eclipse. We're gonna make it through it. And but I think it's going to be intense, and it's going to be interesting to watch it. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where this goes. It
definitely will be. Like we said earlier, it's we're absolutely feeling it. We're absolutely starting to feel it already.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, all right. Well, with that, my camera went out. I'm on another camera here, but we're going to thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all so much for joining us once again.
You bet.
And we'll see you next time.
You bet. Bye now.